Hello, Dr. Boylan here from Noretta Family Medicine. Over the past week, I've heard some additional concerns about COVID-19 and the vaccine, so I thought I'd go through those today with a video. The first concern about COVID-19 was again about masks. Also heard a question about, are these numbers that are being reported with infections and deaths, are they accurate? And then a question about the Delta variant and whether it makes people sicker or whether it makes people less sick. And then with the vaccine, some concerns include, do they work? Can we trust these because they were produced by these big pharmaceutical companies who make tons of money? Another question about emergency use authorization versus full approval. I had a question about control groups in the creation of the vaccine. And also, why are we focusing so much on the vaccine instead of the risk factors for severe COVID, like obesity and diabetes? And then again, a persistent concern about possibly dying after getting the vaccine. So let's start with the general COVID-19 questions about masks. So masks, and I demonstrated this in the last video, masks do work, but they are not 100%. So, masking is a very simple way that you can go about trying to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Unfortunately, as it becomes more contagious, masks do become a little bit less effective, but they're still better than nothing. All right, next concern was about the numbers and how they could potentially be inaccurate. And yeah, I'm sure some of the numbers that are out there about the number of infections, even the number of deaths, are slightly inaccurate. But I can't imagine a scenario in which there is a lot of intentional skewing of these numbers. Yes, there are going to be some incidental and accidental, maybe underreports or overreports, on both ends. While they're not totally perfect, what I want you to do is look at the overall trend of the numbers. As physicians, we're trained to do that with things like blood pressures, lab results, things like that. And so that's what I would encourage you to do with the cases. Don't get bogged down in the exact number of cases. Look at the trend over time. And then finally, a question about, is the Delta variant, does it make people sicker? Does it make people less sick? And so what I would say is this, until the vaccines were approved, there were probably more deaths during that time from COVID-19. Now, let's say the population has been cut in half, and I know that it's probably more than half, but half vaccinated, half unvaccinated. And so the number of deaths, thankfully, is skewed because people have been vaccinated, and vaccines, and that shows you that vaccines prevent deaths, COVID-19 deaths. They don't prevent all deaths, but a majority of them, and that is playing out in the numbers that are being shown by a lot of hospital systems. They're putting numbers out there so everybody can see them, which I think is a great thing. So that leads into the question about vaccine, what we call efficacy. Does it work? And so the answer is that it helps to prevent severe infections requiring hospitalization and death, but it's not going to prevent every single case of COVID-19. But what we're trying to do is push COVID-19 into the category of the common cold. You get it, you move on with life. Instead of you get it, you could be hospitalized or die from it. All right, next question is, these big pharmaceutical companies are involved in the production of the COVID-19 vaccine. Why should I trust them? All right, so this is a big one because, with me opening this direct primary care practice, I purposely opened this practice in order to try and avoid influence from pharmaceutical companies and administrators who are motivated by things other than just taking care of patients. But I will say this, there would have been no other way in this country and in the world for us to develop vaccines without these pharmaceutical companies. I don't think that from a science or scientist perspective, there was a lot of purposeful bias. But the problem comes in when these companies use a lot of their money to market products. And so that's created a lot of mistrust. It drives up the cost of medicines, et cetera, et cetera. So I understand the concerns about big pharmaceutical companies. But again, we had no other way to develop these vaccines. These companies had the manpower to do it. And so therefore they did. What about this emergency use authorization versus full vaccine approval? And can I trust those? So emergency use authorization can be granted after a medication, it doesn't have to be a vaccine, has gone through clinical trials and has had a couple of months. Have those patients in the clinical trials be monitored. most side effects of medications are going to show up in the first 2 months after somebody has received that. And after 2 months, the drug can receive emergency use authorization approval if there's been shown to be no other adequate treatment against that disease that they're trying to treat. And so, of course, that was the case with COVID-19. And again, thank you to the people in the clinical trials. Full approval of a vaccine or medication can come after 6 months of the emergency of people receiving the medication under the emergency use authorization. And so for vaccines specifically, there's this VAERS system, this database. And where that database comes in is that all possible reactions that could possibly be related to the vaccine are supposed to be listed in this database. So but there's no cause. So you can list the side effect that happened, whether it be death or whether it be, a sneeze, in this database, but there doesn't need to be proof in order for you to list it in the database. Everything is listed. So if somebody dies a couple days after getting the vaccine, it's going to be listed in the VAERS system. And so I had another patient that had a concern about that, and just about, I know somebody that died after getting the vaccine. I'm not going to get the vaccine because of that. Okay, so I talked about this in the last video. And the truth is that unfortunately people die unexpectedly. And what we need to do in terms of the vaccines is figure out, okay, let's take a look at the vaccine database and see how many people died after getting the vaccine, okay? Then we need and figure out a rate. And then let's take a look at the rate of deaths that are expected regardless. Like, let's take a look at 2 years ago. What was the rate of death of just everybody around that time? And you have to compare those two levels. Was one higher? Was one lower? And it turns out that no, they're about the same. And so we can't say that the vaccines in general cause more death in people than just anybody who's walking down the street at any point in time. So, all right, next concern is about the science of creating the vaccine. Was there a control group? Why are we not talking about the control group? That type of thing. So yes, there was a control group, but regardless of that, we have a great control group, or we've had, let me put it this way, we've had a great control group over the past year and how many months has it been? 6 months since this pandemic started. So anybody who's unvaccinated is in essentially the control group. And so when the emergency use authorization came out, people who were not vaccinated essentially became a control group. And so therefore we can do a lot of great data collection from that. All right, and the last concern that I've heard is, why are we so focused on the vaccine? Why are we not focused on helping people lose weight, get their diabetes under control? Because those are the risk factors that cause people to have severe COVID. And so what I would say to that is, that's my job and that's what I do on an everyday basis. So that's really what I find as part of my role, maybe a majority of my role as a family medicine physician. And so I talk with, my patients can tell you, I talk with everybody that walks through the door about diet, exercise. I don't talk necessarily specifically about weight loss because you can't necessarily control that, but I do talk about other things related to weight. While I'm doing that, the vaccine is a wonderful thing to try and prevent people from that are at higher risk from getting severe cases of COVID and dying, while I'm trying to work with them on losing weight, controlling their diabetes, etc. Most people in healthcare can tell you that doing those things, trying to improve healthy lifestyle habits, will not happen overnight. It is a roller coaster, similar to people quitting smoking. People do well, then they fall off the wagon and so forth. And that happens with lifestyle changes too. So I work with people every day. I really try and push that. That's one of the reasons that I'm a primary care doctor, why I'm a family medicine physician, is because I believe in that. But I understand the media is not focusing on that. And so I would love if they did, just continue to highlight the importance of eating healthy and controlling your diabetes, for instance. So anyway, all right, well, those are the concerns this week. If I have more concerns next week, I'll come back with more information. But stay safe out there, get vaccinated, and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.